Welcome back, Tide and Tigers. We're on the Alabama segment part of this Tide and Tigers episode, the winning part. I'm going to lead it off and go first because that's what we do here at Alabama. We are first. If you're not first, you're last, and then Auburn's last. So, Iron Bowl went exactly how I thought it was going to go. Thought Alabama was going to cover. They covered. Thought they were going to dominate. They did. A couple things I think that could have been cleaned up a little bit, but overall, the game, it was a lackluster game, but they dominated from start to finish. Kalen DeBoer goes 1-0 in his Iron Bowl debut, which is all important. It was nice that it was home. But, first couple things we'll talk about. Malachi Moore, former Trustful alum, 5-0 in Iron Bowl games. That's never been done by an Alabama player. So that's an incredible stat. Shout out to Malachi, former Trustful alumni. He ends his career at Alabama with another win over Auburn. That's a pretty special stat to have, and he'll keep, I think, for a long time. He's a guy that was there to start off in the COVID years. They got that extra year and took advantage of it. So shout out to Malachi. But on to the game. The game was very a lot of turnovers, 6 turnovers to be exact, 4 by Alabama. That to me is a recipe to lose a game, and to lose the turnover battle like that Alabama did and still win the game. Just shows that how dominant they were in that game. Milroe throws for 256 yards, 104 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns rushing. They go as he goes, and the games he rushes for over 100 yards, they don't lose. He usually runs for a lot of touchdowns, and when that happens, Bama's a team that nobody wants to play in the playoffs. I think they're going to make the playoffs. This is going to eat fans alive, but I think they deserve to be in the playoff. I know I talked a little earlier about Oklahoma and Vanderbilt loss should knock them out, but when I put resumes together of other teams like Ole Miss, South Carolina, and these teams, Bama's got the better resume. Miami, again, they didn't play a top 25 team. We talked about that earlier. So, again, this was a game that Bama had to have. They had to be impressive. I don't think they were impressive, but again, I think they were impressive enough, in the resume and the wins over Georgia and South Carolina speak for themselves, that they're going to be able to get in, and I think they're going to do some damage in the playoffs. And they may find themselves with an easier road than some of the other teams. But I think going into the playoffs, what worries me the most about Alabama has got to be the Ryan Williams situation. Ryan Williams, the first 5 games of the year, was averaging about 109 yards per game, and he had 5 touchdowns in those first 5 games. Since then, Ryan Williams in 7 games is averaging 44 yards and only 2 receiving touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown. His production has been cut in half, and this is your biggest playtime. This is your biggest playmaker. I think they got to find ways to get him the ball, whether it's on sweeps, whether it's on screens. Get him the ball as quick as you can. I felt like I compare him so much to Percy Harvin for Florida. I've been saying that since his sophomore year at Saraland. And credit to Dan Mullen when he was at Florida. He just found random ways to get Ryan Williams the ball, whether it was a reverse or a counter handoff or a sweep. He was always, the big play is fun and nice, but you saw in the Iron Bowl, he had the shot at the big touchdown and he dropped it. Had another one he fumbled. That to me is the most concerning thing, because when he is on and making plays, Bama's going to be a team that can play with anybody in the country. But when he's averaging 40-something yards a game, that is not a recipe to go beat in Oregon, to go beat at Ohio State. I'm not going to go too much in Ohio State because they lost to Michigan, but they're still a good football team. If you're going to go beat a top-tier team in the country like a Texas, Ryan Williams is going to have to go for 100 yards. And I know that Bernard went for 100 yards that game. He looks incredible and is becoming that great second option at receiver. He's been more of the first option the last couple weeks. But they got to get Williams going if they're going to make a run in the playoffs. And the other concern would be the turnovers and then the defensive secondary. Thorne threw for over 300 yards. And I know Auburn's got some good receivers, but you can't be giving up 300-yard games if you're going to want to win down the stretch. So losing the turnover battle 4-2, giving up 300 yards in the secondary, and then Williams not getting going, especially down the stretch, is what concerns me going into this Final 12 playoffs. But overall, great game for Bama. Milroe plays a lot better. I did have the one interception, but he played a lot better, and that's the Jalen Milroe we need to see. I like Bama to at least make the Final Four. But looking back at this season, circling back, this is Bama's missed the missed the SEC title game only 3 times in the last 12 years, or since 2012. So yes, 12 years, 3 times, and a couple of those times they were still like number 1 in the country and lost to Auburn that year with the comeback. The other year they ended up coming back to play Georgia for the national championship. And that was another Auburn loss down the stretch that Auburn went to the SEC championship game. So to me, I would say this would be in Alabama standards a disappointing season. It's not a 10-win regular season. They don't win the SEC championship game. I think there were a lot, there were some high expectations, especially after beating Georgia, and they just didn't, the loss to Vanderbilt, the worst loss maybe since Louisiana Monroe to Oklahoma, and yet they're still going to find a way to get into the playoff. And I really think they are. And I could come back next week after championship week and be wrong about that. But when you don't have your best year and you don't make the SEC championship and you still have a chance to play for the national title, that's why people are so upset around the country. It feels like there's this Alabama bias, but Alabama draws the ratings. Alabama usually plays well when they get into big games. That Michigan game was one of the best games of the year last year, even though they lost. So, it was, to me, I'm very excited about Alabama getting in because I think they can, make some magic. But it's always good to win the Iron Bowl. 5 years in a row, incredible. And again, I'm very, this is the vault they need going into the playoffs of winning a rivalry game, and it really wasn't close. Let's see what Bama does in the playoff when they make it. If I come back next week and I'm wrong, we'll have to go a different direction, look for a bowl game. But there'll be a lot more conversations about Milroe's future and a lot of other things going on if that's not the case. But hey, we're here, we're winners, Iron Bowl victory, roll Tide.